Love ya. Thank you. Hi everyone, it's Sarah, and this week we're going to be talking about the romance books that I've read recently. If you've watched my 2024 goals, one of my goals in that video was to read from more genres, one of those specifically being romances. I have read some romances, but it's been trickled into other genres, such as historical fiction and fantasy. So my knowledge in romance books is very little. It's just what I've seen over on booktube and bookstagram that other people are loving. So I've decided to try a few and see how they go for me. And because it's Valentine's Day next week, I thought this would be the perfect time. I've been in the mood to actually pick up and try some romances. For this video, I'm going to go over 3 romance books. The first romance book that I'm going to mention is actually one that I read in January, and I mentioned it in my January wrap-up, so you might have already heard me speak about this. So we're going to start off with The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary. Basically, we follow Tiffy and Leon. They meet after Leon has advertised his flat that's up for a rental share, but this rental means that they will be sharing a bed. They don't technically share a bed, as he works nights and she works days, so they're never in at the same time. So they're using the same bed, but they're never in it together. The reason Tiffy is desperate to move out and do this is because it's cheap, and she's just broke up with her partner, so she's looking to move out as soon as possible to get away from her ex. This book I would recommend. I think it's a good introduction to romance. I have looked through reviews for this book, and people who typically enjoy and read more romance seem to not enjoy this book as much, and I think I understand why. It's because throughout this there's a lot of background story on toxic exes, on friendships, on family. There's a lot of build up, and it takes a while to get to the romance, which I think for me was perfect. I think it was a really realistic view of what happens in life, and I think that's what I enjoy. I know a lot of people go into books and go into stories for the fantasy elements of it, for the unrealistic elements of it, to just live in that world and escape from our world, but I quite like the touch on reality, and I think the Flatshare did that really well. I think if you've experienced any of these things that the Flatshare mentions, you'll be able to relate more to the story and maybe enjoy it a bit more like I did. So although I probably wouldn't say this was like a fully fledged romance, I definitely still would recommend it. I think it was solidly written, and I would love to read more by Beth O'Leary. I don't think there was one point that she did anything wrong. I think the experiences that she wrote about were very accurate, and I really respect this book for what it was, and I did have a good time with it. And I felt the connection between the main characters. I felt like that was really well done, so I would like to read more from this author. That being said, if you're looking for a fully fledged romance, sweep you off your feet kind of romance, then this probably isn't for you. The next book I'm going to mention is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Calino, and this was one that I should have really enjoyed. It was set in New York City. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love New York City. Also, our main characters had hobbies such as photography. I'm also really interested in photography, so I don't know, I just thought the atmosphere of this book was going to be perfect, so I was really excited to go into this one. I've only heard great things. Let me tell you, when I was 30% into this book and I was ready to DNF, I was left feeling very disappointed. So we follow Matt and Grace, who used to go to college together, and they had this romance, and they ended up splitting for whatever means. From the start of the book, it starts with Matt seeing Grace on the subway, and they miss each other. She's already gone off onto the subway, and he's stood on the platform longing for her. And that's when we start getting flashbacks of them being together in college. They kind of missed their chance at romance the first time round. I guess it's a second chance romance. And we see what they went through in college, why they split, and what happens now as they are adults. So this is very much the miscommunication trope. They just don't talk to each other about any issues they have, or they aren't able to talk to each other at some points. There is definitely that, so if that's not for you, also maybe don't pick this up. For me, if I took out the things that I didn't like in this story, this would have been just an okay romance. I didn't feel the connection between the characters personally. For me, I could only see their attraction to one another. Like, they found each other hot, but beyond that, I didn't really feel the emotional connection or why they were even interested in each other. So without the things that I didn't like, this would have got maybe a 3-star. It was a very mediocre read. Then we add in the things that I didn't enjoy about this book, and it gets knocked down to a 2-star read. I'm not sure if the miscommunication trope is something that I don't like. It's something that I will have to experience more of to see if that's something that irritated me. But I didn't think that was one of the highlights. It wasn't something that I was focused on throughout the book, so I don't think it bothered me. I think it was more just the characters in general. I really didn't like our male main character. I thought he was a bit cocky and a bit of a douche, to be quite honest with you. He was nice enough in certain situations and he said all the right things, but I was like, it felt forced. It didn't feel like him. I don't know, there was just something off about these characters, and I am a very character driven person, so for the fact that these characters didn't sit with me really put the story down a lot, so this only got a 2-star rating. And I personally wouldn't recommend it, but I know a lot of people did really love this story. But I think all in all, even without, like I say, without the stuff that I don't like in it, it was a very mediocre read, and if we took those bits out, I think I still would have felt disappointed in it. I think I should have left it at the 30% when I was ready to DNF, but I read a couple of chapters and I enjoyed them, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And then as I got about 80% in, I was ready to DNF again, and by the end of it, I just wished I'd done it. I don't think anything at the ending made up for any of it. I wasn't left feeling any sort of way. I was just glad to be done with it. I've saved the best till last, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Every single person that I've seen talk about this book has absolutely loved it. And then I saw it was part of this month's Kindle deals. It's currently on Kindle for 99p, so if you're interested in it, go get it now because it's really cheap. And I'm glad that I did buy it. I actually want a physical edition now. I had so much fun with this book. We follow Clementine, who one day wakes up to find a strange man in her late aunt's apartment, and he says that he's meant to be subletting this apartment for, I think it's like the summer or something, whilst her aunt is on holiday. So we find out that it's a magical apartment and that he is actually living 7 years in the past, whilst Clementine is living 7 years in the future. I feel like it's a very odd concept, and to explain it without spoiling a lot is hard, so I'm just gonna leave it there. But it's also really easy to follow as you're reading it. All in all, I think this was a beautiful love story. This, for me, was typically what I expected a romance to be, and I really enjoyed this. This was full-on romance, but it also touched on passions and careers. So I think anyone in their 20s, for me, I think this was a perfectly timed read. You know, when you just pick up a book and you read it and you just think like, this is what I needed. This is the book that I needed at this time of my life. This was that for me. I think for anyone in their 20s who is struggling with careers and passions and things like that, I think this would be a perfect read for you if that's you. But also, it's just a full-on beautifully written romance. I love these characters. Their connection was real, and I loved everything they came across. I also loved the aunt in this book and the way that Ashley touched on grief. I would definitely read more from this author, and I'm excited to read more by her. So I think all in all, this romance experiment worked as well as I wanted it to. I didn't find any 5 stars, so if there's any that you think sounds like something that I would really love and you would want to recommend it to me, then let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what your Valentine's Day plans are. For me and James, we've got a lot to celebrate this month. We have Valentine's Day, obviously. We also have our 3-year anniversary, which also lands on Valentine's Day, and James has also got a promotion at his work, so we're celebrating a lot this month. So we're gonna go out for a nice fancy dinner to celebrate. Let me know what you've got going on, if you're just staying at home and reading, if you're going out. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what you're getting up to. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next Friday for another video. Bye! This follows Tiffany and Leon. It's not Tiffany, it's Tiffy. For this video, I'm going to go over 3 more. So the next book that I'm going to mention is Beneath You. And the way that Ashley touched on grief, I definitely would recommend more